one of the things that you really need to remember is that, you know what, your luck can actually change, and it is possible. So I remember when I was growing up, at the age of 11, there was no way that I would have thought that we would be doing the things that we're doing right now, as we do at Premier Property. Buying millions of pounds of property, buying property on a regular basis. Being a property investor where someone like me is able to inspire and help a lot of people. Because back then I didn't even believe that we could even have the basics. So I remember when the first maybe you're too young for this, but I don't know if you can remember when the first video came out, the video cassette system, the VHS videos where everyone was playing videos and buying these at home. And in my mind, I really wanted one of these. I really, with all my heart wanted one of these because all my friends had one of these videos, and our neighbours had them. But I just knew that there was no way that we could actually have it because we just couldn't afford it. Coming from a poor background, mum used to work all the hours God sends, 7 a.m. to 7 at night, 7 days a week as a machinist, clothing machinist. And I had no hope that actually could happen. But deep down there was always something that said, you know what, you can really make this work, you can really make this work. And I remember one specific day when mum arrived and she came along with this big rectangular box and she brought it into the room, and my mind said, could it be? Is it? And as I opened the package up, what I noticed was it was actually one of these lovely videos, which was brand new back then, with these big buttons that you press, VHS video. And my mind just started to believe that, you know what, you can have this. It is doable. And just because you're poor doesn't mean that you can't be wealthy. And I think that was a day when really the start point of knowing that, you know what, you can have more, you can do more, you can be more, actually really started. So now one thing I've noticed is that the key is to really be familiar with adversity, and the point is to be in that center of adversity is really where your biggest growth is. I'm just sharing with you from personal perspective. Every time there's been adversity, that growth starts to happen, and of course that time isn't painful. Maybe you've been through these times where you've had those painful situations, but you always found that you come out the other side. Maybe you found this. Maybe you can relate to this. And there's so many times in my life where that situation's happened. I remember how I actually fell into property. People think that right now at Premier Property we have strategies and methods and formulas and scripts and ways to do things. But when I started, back in 1989, there wasn't any of that. And I wasn't interested in property, I knew nothing about it, and there was no way that someone like me would have been able to get into property. It was only when a family member, a cousin of mine, wanted to buy a property, they couldn't get a mortgage, him and his wife. So what did they do? I was 18 years old, they said, come over here, sign on the dotted line, we're buying a house. And basically what I was a mortgage host. Now, being young and naive, and I keep that little thin slice of naivety because it always keeps the doors open as a professional property investor. But back then I was just young and naive, and I just signed on the dotted line. 3 months later there was a massive market crash, if you can remember, in 1989, and we had late Lady Margaret Thatcher in power. And at the same time, interest rates, I can remember the Leeds and Holbrook Building Society interest rate was 17.5%. Can you imagine? The mortgage went through the roof. And once this happened, the property also was in negative equity because they bought on emotion, they bought the price too high. And when the market fell, the property, like I say, was in negative equity. The mortgage just was too high. So my cousin turned around and said to me, I don't want the property, you have it. Here are the keys. Now, what do you do when you're 18 years old? What do? You think about your family, you think about keeping that relationship. If you're following me, you know what I'm saying, right? So, me being me, I just said, okay, I'll have the property. Not actually realizing what I was actually getting into. Now, they then decided not to move out. Now, you try telling your builder society that you've got a family with 2 kids living in a property who are actually owners of their residence with you, are still living in the property, but they're not paying the mortgage, they're not paying the bills, they're not paying any of that, and they're just leaving it to you. And nobody wanted to listen. And real adversity, there I am at the age of 18, just about to start my whole life, and it got to a point where I was 2 weeks away from repossession. That feeling when that thud on the floor hits, when you pick that package up and you open it up and it says in there, repossession court order, 2 weeks. Can you imagine? So what was I going to do? I had no idea what to do at that time. But, things always tend to be working out for the better. For whatever reason, we got a call from the neighbours. My cousin left the property. They basically said, all your windows and doors are open. Come and check your property. I ran over there very quickly. And to my relief, they'd actually left. They left the property empty. Now, I thought, okay, I've got to cover the mortgage. I've got 2 weeks before it goes to court. What am I going to do? So I contacted some letting agents locally. And what I realized was that at that time, back in 1989, there was a lot of people that actually wanted to rent out rooms, but nobody actually wanted to share their rooms with them. They actually wanted to rent out the whole property. So there's this massive gap in the market, which not a lot of people were actually seeing. And I thought, being young and naive, I thought, you know what? Actually, why don't we just rent these out room by room? I rent the property in rooms, and my aim was to cover the mortgage. But what I found at the end of the month, and the first month was so crucial, because that first month with the deposits came in, the cash came in, and back then you could have cash deposits to yourself, and that money I used to pay off that immediate debt, which meant that court order went away, that repossession order was ripped up, and I could continue life. Month 2, what I noticed was that at the end of the month, it wasn't just covering my mortgage, the income that was coming in, it was actually leaving a surplus left over at the end of each month. And month 3, the same happened again. And what I noticed was that quite easily, there was this money accumulating month by month by month, although there wasn't even any agenda. Now, back then you might wonder, at the age of 18, 19, what did I spend that money on? You might think that. Well, my one was specifically takeaways. So all my money went on takeaways. But anyway, that's another story, right? I don't know if you're like me. I like systems. I like to create systems where, you can follow through with a system. So I created a cookie cutter system. It worked for the first property. And I thought, well, how about I now do this consciously with the second property? So, I went to uni only because my mum wanted me to go to uni just to please her. I went there, got the badge, got the label, all that, right? But while I was there, while everybody else was renting, I actually bought my property. So I purchased the property with an agenda. And the agenda was to do the same thing I did with the first one. Now, the system was actually developing. Now, this was a conscious effort. So, first of all, we fell into it, unconsciously. And second property is a conscious effort, so we're still working on the systems. Money was still coming in on a monthly basis. Now, I did get nicknamed the landlord for that one, but that's another story. And you can imagine where all the parties were happening. But let's not get into that. So there it was, second property. And again, the cookie cutter system became really useful. So I repeated that with the third property and the fourth property. And what I noticed was very quickly, by the age of 24, some would say that I was actually financially free in terms of the money that was coming in. And what we've done was we refined the system, and it worked really well. So now it was becoming unconscious. So I was just doing this thing that people were calling a thing. Cam, you're really good at this. You're really good at this. And all it was, it just became unconscious because just learned what to do and just got used to doing it. And fast forward to right now, we use one of our strategies, which about, you've heard about, house of multiple occupancy, HMOs, renting out rooms. It's one of our favorite strategies at Premier Property. And it all started in the center of adversity. Now, think about points of adversity that maybe you have experienced or are experiencing. What is that central point where you can decide to grow? What is the achievement that you can bring from that adversity? What can you do right now to build that strength and really move forward with that? What is it that you can do? For me, there's been so many. I think I've had my fair share, or more than my fair share. The first crash, like I mentioned when I started, Again, it happened, didn't it, with the Great Recession, where and then the financial institutions, literally banks, which we're all familiar with, right? Just stopping lending just overnight. There's all of that. The adversity, when my mum said she has 9 months to live, and I was £178,000 in credit card debt at the exact same time on the 17th of March in 2008. Luckily, my mum's still with me. That's another story I might share with you another time. That adversity, the strength, how you build that, how we created a sourcing business just because of all of that happening. Fast forward to right now, we all know about COVID-19. Is that adversity? Of course it is. But you know what? I don't want to say you get used to it, because you never do. But that pain, that adversity, in the center of it, like what I say, there's always growth. And right now, there's a technological growth. We're using systems, and we're using lots of different types and methods of reaching out to people. Videos like this, Zoom calls, you name it. There's a whole new level that's actually come right from adversity. Because right now at Premier Property, we have a huge training suite which takes over 150 people. It's a £2.6 million training suite, which is a deal in itself. However, there's no one in the training suite because of COVID-19. So we've had to adapt, we've had to deal with the adversity, and all of that means that you just keep moving forward as we continue to do so. And I hope this inspires you in some way for you to think about you and move forward.